I told my boss multiple times about my disabilities, got zero accommodations, was interrogated daily, lied about to HR, strung along for 2 weeks thinking I still had a job, and then abruptly fired. How is this not wrongful termination? I'm 27 years old, and for the past 2 years, I've been working at a job that I genuinely love, even though it challenges me in ways I never expected. Before I explain my situation fully, I think it's important to share a bit about who I am and what I've dealt with for most of my life, because it plays a huge role in everything I experience now. Since I was about 3 years old, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, a learning disability, and insomnia. These aren't things that came and went. They've always been part of my everyday life. Growing up, I struggled in ways that weren't always visible to others. School, for example, was never easy for me. It wasn't that I didn't want to learn or that I wasn't trying. I was trying constantly, but focusing, retaining information, and processing things at the same pace as everyone else felt nearly impossible at times. Over the years, I've been on different medications to help manage these conditions, and I've also spent a lot of time in therapy. Therapy is still something I continue today because it helps me navigate my thoughts and emotions. Recently, though, I made the personal decision to stop taking medication for a while. I wanted to give my body a break and see how I function on my own, even though I knew that might make some things more difficult. Despite everything, I worked hard to build a career for myself. I became a licensed pharmacy technician, and I've held that certification for about 5 years now. That alone is something I'm proud of because it wasn't easy to get there. 2 years ago, I was hired by a health system. For privacy reasons, I won't name it, but getting that job felt like a big step forward for me. I started in the warehouse, where I worked for about a year. That role was more physical and routine-based, and I was able to adapt to it over time. It had its challenges, but it didn't overwhelm me in the same way my current role sometimes does. About a year ago, I transitioned into a different department, a sit-down position that I'm currently in now. This role is much more mentally demanding, requiring focus, memory, multitasking, and attention to detail. Even with all of that, I truly love my job. I love the people I work with, I appreciate the environment, and the pay is good. There are so many positives, and I don't take that for granted. But at the same time, I struggle more than most people probably realize. One of my biggest challenges is memory. I have to remember a large amount of information every day, and that's something that has always been difficult for me. It's not that I don't care or that I'm not paying attention, it's just that things don't always stick the way they should. On top of that, my job requires me to constantly switch between tasks. I might be in the middle of one thing and then get pulled away to handle something else. When I come back, I'm expected to pick up exactly where I left off, but for me, it's not that simple. It often feels like my train of thought disappears, and I have to start over or spend time trying to figure out what I was doing. The job itself is also very complex. For example, when a patient needs a specific medication, there isn't just one straightforward way to handle it. Different medications require different procedures, different steps, and different levels of attention. There are also multiple services we provide, each with its own set of instructions and expectations. It's not repetitive work where you can rely on muscle memory, it's constantly changing, and that makes it harder for me to stay on track. Because of all this, the job can be very stressful. It demands a lot of mental energy, and there are days when I feel completely overwhelmed. I've had to go through training twice for this position. The first time, I struggled so much that I wasn't really grasping anything. No matter how hard I tried, it felt like the information just wasn't clicking. That was incredibly discouraging, and it made me question whether I was capable of doing the job at all. After I finished my training, the expectation for most people in my position was pretty clear. Typically, once training is complete, you're given about 2 to 3 weeks to work more independently, but still with support, someone available to check over your work and guide you if needed. It's supposed to be a transition period where you can build confidence and slowly adjust to the full responsibilities of the role. That's not how it happened for me. I was only given a few days, February 2nd to February 5th. Not even a full week. During that short time, I did have someone checking over my work, but just as I was starting to get used to things, she left. After that, I was on my own much sooner than I should have been, especially considering how complex the job is and how much I already struggle with memory, multitasking, and processing. Those first days on my own were really difficult. I felt overwhelmed, unsure, and honestly, unprepared. I was trying my best to keep up, but it felt like I had been thrown into something without enough time to fully understand it. Still, I didn't give up. I started developing my own ways to cope. Asked for help whenever I needed it, even when it felt uncomfortable. I wrote down as many notes as I could, anything that might help me remember processes or steps later on. Slowly, I started to get the hang of things. It wasn't perfect, but I was improving. Then, around February 8th, things took a turn. That's when I started getting pulled into the office. At first, I thought it was just normal feedback or check-ins, but it quickly became a daily occurrence. My manager would call me in and start questioning me about the smallest details of my work. It wasn't just about correcting mistakes. It felt like I was being scrutinized for everything I did, even when I was doing things correctly. There were times where I genuinely didn't understand why I was being questioned. For example, I once worked on a patient's order where the patient specifically requested less medication than usual. I followed that request and processed it accordingly. Later, I was pulled into the office and asked why I sent less. I explained that it was what the patient wanted. On another occasion, a pharmacist instructed me to send more medication, so I did. Again, I was pulled into the office and questioned, this time about why I sent more. It felt like no matter what I did, there was always something wrong with it. I'll be honest, there were definitely things I struggled with and didn't do correctly. I'm not denying that. But what made it harder was that I wasn't just being corrected on mistakes. I was constantly being questioned about things I had actually done right. My manager and the coordinator would ask me to explain how I got to the correct answer, as if I needed to justify every single step of my thinking. My coordinator, in particular, would pull me into the office frequently. There was one time that really stood out to me. She brought me in and asked me around 10 different questions in one sitting. Some of those questions were about things I had done correctly. She even acknowledged that I got them right, but still wanted me to explain how I arrived at those answers. The problem was, when I'm put on the spot like that, my mind goes blank. It's like my brain freezes, and I can't access the information I need, even if I knew it in the moment when I was doing the task. Having to suddenly recall my entire thought process under pressure made everything worse. Being pulled into the office every single day started to take a serious toll on me. Not just emotionally, but also on my performance. Every time I was in the middle of a task, I would have to stop, go into the office, answer questions, feel anxious and overwhelmed, and then return to my desk and try to remember where I left off. Most of the time, I couldn't. I would lose my place, lose my train of thought, and have to start over or spend extra time figuring things out again. It slowed me down significantly. And then I was questioned about that too. My manager would ask me why I was behind, without really acknowledging how often I was being pulled away from my work. It felt like I was stuck in a cycle I couldn't break, getting interrupted, falling behind, and then being criticized for falling behind. Eventually, it escalated to the point where I was written up twice for performance, specifically for not improving in my role. My coordinator would also text me outside of those office meetings, asking me questions about how I did certain tasks and why I made certain decisions. On top of that, there was a group chat that included my boss, my coordinator, and me. Both of them would ask questions in that chat as well, sometimes putting me on the spot in front of both of them at once. The last time I got written up, I wasn't alone in the meeting. I had a union representative with me, who is also one of my coworkers. Having her there made a difference because for once I didn't feel completely isolated or like I had to defend myself on my own. During that meeting, both my boss and my union rep agreed on something important, that my union rep would step in and help support me moving forward. My coordinator wasn't present for that conversation. After the meeting, I went back to work and continued doing my job as best as I could, but this time I had the added support of my coworker. She helped guide me through certain processes, answer my questions, and gave me reassurance when I needed it. For the first time in a while, things actually started to feel manageable. I felt like I was finally making progress without constantly being overwhelmed or second-guessing every move I made. But that didn't last. One day, my coworker was off, and I was working without that support. My coordinator pulled me into her office again. At this point, that alone was enough to make my anxiety spike. She started questioning me about something I had worked on and asked me how I got my answer. I tried to think back, but like always, being put on the spot made my mind go blank. I told her honestly that my coworker had helped me with that particular situation. Instead of accepting that, she immediately questioned why my coworker was helping me at all. Her tone made it feel like I had done something wrong just by receiving help. I didn't know how to respond in that moment. I felt caught off guard and pressured, so I just said that my boss was aware of it, that it had already been discussed and agreed upon. But my coordinator dismissed that and said that she shouldn't be helping me. That moment stuck with me. It felt like the one bit of support I had been given was suddenly being taken away or turned into something negative. Then things escalated even further. Most recently, I was pulled into a meeting with HR. It had reached the DRC stage, the point where they essentially determine whether or not you're going to continue working there. Walking into that meeting, I already felt anxious, but I was also determined to advocate for myself. During the meeting, my boss brought up 3 areas where she said I still needed to improve. I listened and I told her that I understood. I made it clear that I was actively working on those things, because I genuinely am. I'm not ignoring feedback or refusing to improve. I've been trying every single day. I also spoke up about something I had mentioned many times before: my disabilities. I explained to HR that I have conditions that make certain aspects of the job more challenging for me. I told them that despite that, I've been putting in a lot of effort to find ways to adapt, to improve, and to make my job more manageable. What happened next completely caught me off guard. The HR representative asked my boss if she was aware of my disabilities. And my boss said no. She said she had no idea. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stopped her mid-sentence and corrected her. I told her directly in that moment that she did know. I reminded her that I had told her during my interview. I had brought it up in previous meetings. I had even reminded her again just the week before the HR meeting. On top of that, I had also shared this information with my previous boss, who understood because he had a disability himself. It was something we had connected on. So hearing her deny all of that felt like a complete betrayal. I also brought up something else during that meeting. The week before, my boss had given me a phone number to call if I needed assistance related to my disability. I trusted that information and followed through. I called the number. But it turned out not to be a disability support line at all. It was a therapy line. When I mentioned this in the meeting, my boss acted like she had no idea what I was talking about. She claimed she never gave me a number and never wrote anything down for me. That left me feeling even more confused and frustrated because I knew what had happened. I had followed her instructions, and now it felt like she was denying that too. The HR representative then asked if anyone from ADA had contacted me to discuss accommodations or support options. I had to say no. To my understanding, if an employer is aware that an employee has a disability, they're supposed to involve ADA and begin the process of setting up accommodations. That never happened with either of my bosses. Despite me telling them multiple times, nothing was ever put in motion. That meeting with HR happened 2 Fridays ago, and after it ended, they sent me home and told me to wait for a call. So I waited. Days went by, and I was stuck at home, not knowing what was going to happen. Eventually, HR did reach out to ADA, and the process for accommodations finally started, but even then, no one could tell me whether I still had a job. I felt completely in limbo. I even asked HR if it would be possible for me to transfer back to my old position, mainly because I didn't feel comfortable working under my current boss anymore. After everything that had happened, I just wanted a chance to keep my job in a different environment. And then today happened. About 5 minutes before everything changed, I got a call from my boss. She went into a whole explanation about how the company had supposedly tried to work with me and accommodate my needs, which honestly isn't true. That's not what happened at all. Then, just like that, she told me I was terminated. She also said that I would no longer be eligible to apply for any pharmacy technician positions within the company. I was in shock. I asked her how HR could tell me that accommodations were being worked on, only for me to be fired shortly after. Her response was that she was unaware of that conversation. That made everything feel even more confusing and frustrating, like no one was on the same page, or worse, like things weren't being handled honestly. In that moment, I told her that I would be getting lawyers involved because this felt like wrongful termination. From everything I understand, this doesn't seem right, especially considering the ADA. We ended the call after setting up a time for me to come in and collect my belongings. Now I'm just sitting here trying to process everything. I have no job, no income, and no clear idea of what to do next. For the past 2 weeks, I was holding on to hope that I would be able to return to work, that things would get sorted out, and that I would be given a fair chance. Instead, I feel like I was led on the entire time. I'm devastated. I'm angry. I'm overwhelmed. And more than anything, I feel lost.